Much, my dear Mr. Stevenson. I think his brief analysis of the current situation in Iraq could substitute my lengthy speech on Iraq. But I am really admire and very much encouraged that European Union, European Parliament, in the capacity of the Foreign Affairs Committee, in the capacity of Mr. Stevenson and others, keeping eyes open on the disastrous situation in my country. And hopefully this is going to pave the way towards assisting Iraqi people to get rid of a new form of dictatorship and to restore my country, putting it into the right course of building real democracy. Honorable guests, thank you very much for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, let me first express my sincere thanks for you all, for the concern about the situation in my country. Inviting me to speak to you proves your objectivity, to seek evidence and listen to all parties involved in the crisis, and not only listen to the official view of the government, which firmly holds power and media in Iraq. I am here today to tell you about what's really going on in my country. I want to share with you some of the horrible facts that you cannot find in your daily newspapers or media channels. Iraq, which was supposed to be free from dictatorship 10 years ago and to be rebuilt as a democratic nation with your support as the free world of the international community, is now sinking into another form of dictatorship. But this time, also with the support of some members of the international community, unfortunately, which were deceived and misled by the current ruling regime. It is no secret anymore that Iraq is now held hostage by the current Prime Minister and its ruling party. Our experience with this government has dashed all hopes that Iraq will become a fully functioning democracy based on the rule of law. As you all well know, that terrorism exists in many parts of the world. Why it is increasing in Iraq, despite of huge allocated budget for the security? Terrorism expands where there are feeding elements like poverty, corruption, injustice, and sectarian discrimination. I will show you how al-Maliki helps the spread of terrorism in my country. I am not exaggerating if I say that Iraq has never witnessed in its modern history a government as worse as the current one. After 8 years under the government of Nur al-Maliki, Iraq has been deteriorating in public services, social justice, transitional democracy, development, judiciary, national peace, security, and last but not least, foreign policy. Al-Maliki has not only become a threat to the future of Iraq, but also a danger to the unity of the country and stability in the region. ladies and gentlemen, because of the time tight limit, I will be very brief, and I will be pleased to provide you with detailed information afterwards or answer any question in your mind. I can only mention now some issues about human rights, security, governance, and foreign policy. Starting with the human rights, I am sure that you have been following up and expressed your concern for the news and reports about the human rights situation in Iraq, which were issued by international organizations like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. The actual situation much worse, as reports are short in covering unreachable secret prison and detention centers in the green zone or military camps. Just a few days ago, the government executed 42 people on terrorism charges. The astonishing thing here is that some of the inmates have already been found not guilty, but judicial authorities and were waiting to be released. Their families were expecting their arrival in their homes any moment, but they unfortunately got only their dead bodies. And I have copies of this tragedy. Does this help and end terrorism in my country? This government executed so far 132 people this year and 129 last year. Iraq Ministry of Justice confirmed that there are thousands queuing up for executions. Thousands of Iraqis. Can you explain to me why all these death penalties are against one sect or ethnic group? Why we did not hear of any executions of members of the Shia, death squad, and militias, simply because they are from the same sect of the Prime Minister? We have to admit of the fact that there is an ethnic and religious cleansing in my country. I am not only the one who claims this fact. United Nations Human Rights Chief Navy Pillay has recently harshly criticized Iraq's criminal justice system and accused Iraqi authorities of numerous convictions based on confessions obtained under torture and ill treatment, a weak judiciary, and trial proceedings that fall short of international standards. Can I get water, please?
Some water.
Sorry. More than 100 of my office staff are still under detention and being tortured. Some of them already died of torture. Several others have been sentenced to death. Their families are being blackmailed by security officers to release their sons in return of paying tens of thousands of dollars. Although all the international organizations condemned these mock trials and called for halting these biased proceedings, the government authorities seem indifferent and are so determined to execute them soon. We need the support of the international community to stop this disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, my case is politically motivated, and charges are absolutely fabricated. Regardless, I express my readiness to return to Iraq, to Baghdad, and face all the charges against me and my staff. In case Europe guarantee a fair trial, I am confident of my and my bodyguard's innocence, and these accusations are totally fabricated. For the record, as Mr. Stevens mentioned, in 2006, I lost my 3 siblings, 2 brothers and 1 sister, in separate terrorist assassinations. It's not a car bomb, being killed specifically and individually in 2006. 3 of them in 6 months in 2006. And I am in my capacity as a vice president. I didn't ask for a revenge. Even when Noor al-Maliki government failed to arrest the assassinators, the killers, I didn't ask them why. I just kept silence. This is the way that I have behaved. How come I now accused of terrorism act? I was the first high-ranking official to break the locks of the secret prison in 2008. And uncovered the various types of tortures against innocent people. Yes, what I am facing now is only a consequence and a fulfillment of a government's threat to me. A few years ago, to stop me from doing my duty in advocating human rights and supporting justice in the country. On the other hand, the freedom of speech has become a critical issue in Iraq. Hundreds of journalists have not been only the targets of terrorist groups, but also the government's terrorism. Al-Baghdadi, a TV channel, has recently been forced to shut down, and the government confiscated all its equipment just because the channel was successfully in exposing all government corruption files to the public. The second part of my speech, security. As for the security, it has been increasingly deteriorating during the last 2 years in the country, especially in the capital. Baghdad, United Nations reports said more than 5,000 died and tens of thousands injured in violent attack this year. And when we want to investigate the responsibility for such horrible security collapse, the Prime Minister says that he cannot be held accountable. Although he is, in addition to his position as a Prime Minister, he is acting as a Commander-in-Chief, acting Minister of Defense, acting Minister of Interior, acting Minister of Security, National Security, acting the head of intelligence, all in one pocket. And he is exclusively running the security file, not allowing, because there is no power sharing, not allowing anybody to take part or to share or to give an advice or criticize the management and the administration of the security file. Security situation is declining, although security forces are constantly growing and reached more than 1.5 million individuals. Moreover, the annual security budget takes more than 25% of the annual budget, which is usually higher than 100 billion US dollar. 5 days ago, in a TV interview, the Prime Minister announced that his 20-year-old son took armed forces and raided the residence of a businessman in the green zone because he embezzled 100 million US dollar and has hundreds of silencers gun in his house and illegally occupies tens of properties in the capital. Till now, we don't know. We do not know what official title his son has in the country to have such kind of power. I should admit that the government security forces were successful, but in one mission. In attacking Camp Ashraf, in curbing the peaceful protesters against the government. The well-known and latest example is in Hawija city in Kirkuk on April the 23rd of 2013, killing and injuring hundreds of demonstrators. The third part of my speech, governance and corruption. As for governance and corruption, I need long hours to cover part of this file. Local and foreign investors and businessmen usually say that the main obstacle to come to Iraq is the poor government effectiveness, married by corruption and political interference. They consider poor governance more dangerous than security. Since April 2003, Iraq spent more than 630 billion US dollar in addition to more than 30 billion dollars from donors countries, while 30% of the population still live under poverty line. Millions still spend their nights in full darkness because of power cut. Thousands of pupils study on the floor in mud-made schools. Millions have no access to drinkable water in most provinces. Iraq now ranks number 175 of the most corrupted countries in the 182 countries surveyed. As indicated by Transparency International, for 5th year, Baghdad is considered the dangerous and the worst place in the world to live in. UNDP recent report says